Hey, so welcome to another episode of the Soulful Side of Life with me, Ali Portee. I hope you're well and having a good week. And I am so ecstatic about this interview. As 2026 has started off, I had the privilege of sitting down with Adam Leja. He is a Polish art collector, couture lover, an all around just fashionable guy, and he always comes into the room happy and joyful, and he has the most flamboyant, debonair outfits when it's Paris Fashion Week. I mean, pussy bow, tied up really well blouses and jackets and coats, dressed to the nines. Adam, he's looking better than most half of the people in the room. He puts effort and attention and time into how he looks, and he is a true fashionista. And I'm just grateful that he sat down with me to talk about his thoughts for fashion in 2026, where he thinks things are headed. So just a little bit about Adam. He is from Warsaw, Poland. He has lived in Massachusetts as well as Paris. And since 1992, he has been running Gallery 32 in Warsaw, specializing in Art Deco. And he has worked as an art editor for Art and Business, and he often collaborates with Elle Poland, Harper's Bazaar Poland, and other publications. Adam is a curator, and he does exhibitions. He's got a current one on happening now in Poland, which I hope that I can make it to see. He is also a consultant for private collectors, and he works with museums like the National Museum in Warsaw. In addition to all of this, Adam owns one of the biggest fashion collections in Eastern Europe, which has more than 5,000, objects that spans the time period between 1850 to the present. So enjoy this podcast episode. If you are a lover of fashion, I think you're going to take away quite a lot of things from this conversation, or you'll at least be in tune and understand the things that we discuss. So enjoy. Adam, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
I love this look that you have with the painting behind you and your glasses, and you always come dressed to the T when it's Paris Fashion Week.
Because I think when you come to Paris and you come to couture, you're obliged to dress the part, I think, and it's the fun. What
It
is
is.
fashion? Fashion is supposed to be fun.
You're right. You're right. I need to take a more daring step like you, because you will have, the feathers, the sea bow ties, everything decked out. And you're right. Fashion is about expressing yourself and looking the part.
Exactly. I think even if someone does not like fashion, they wake up every day and they put clothes on themselves. Even if they're not conscious, right, about fashion, they think, am I going to wear jeans? Am I going to wear a blue sweater or a red sweater or whatever, right? So if we're not fashionistas, right, or very much into fashion, we still think what we are going to wear every day.
Yes.
And the clothes become a certain our statement, right?
Yes.
But also like our armor that that covers us from the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fashion is something that is very, very important.
It is. It's because we have to eat every day and we have to dress every
Of
day.
course,
And though you may not be eating Michelin 5-star every day, we all have to think about what we eat, and we all have to think about what we're going to put on. So it's more
of course.
important than we think.
It's not important if we're wearing couture or a designer pieces. It doesn't really matter. It matters that you're putting the clothes on yourself. So you have to think. Well, of course, you can adjust it to the weather, to the situation, to your personality, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I'm curious, how did you find yourself in the fashion world? Where did the interest stem from?
Well, to tell you the truth, I think I was not too much into fashion. Uh, I started collecting about maybe 20, maybe 30 years ago, but it was because I was dealing in fashion. I have an antique shop and I specialize in Art Deco, so the 1920s, 1930s.
Wow.
And Polish museums were starting to build their collections of this era. So all the pieces that came to me, and I'm talking about furniture, glassware, porcelain, and so on, went to the Polish museums. But people started offering me pieces of clothing, right, or accessories. I really didn't know what to do with them. But I asked the museum curators, would you be interested in this? And they said, yes, very much, because the accessories, the fashion defines the era.
I
So
see.
everything I managed to find went to the museums. And one moment, a friend of mine said, oh my God, you're such a collector. You like collecting works of art. Why don't you keep some of the beautiful fashion pieces for your collection? And I
Mhm.
think that was in one way good and the other way bad, because now my fashion collection is over 5,000 pieces. So the museums don't get anything and everything just stays with me.
Wow. Do you have that stored in a warehouse or an
Yes.
office?
I used to keep it at my home, but it was too much. So
Right.
I have a special warehouse to keep it, to house it properly, right? To store it properly. And they come out when I do the museum exhibitions.
Piece
Yeah.
of light.
And
Wow.
the thing is that I only collect women's fashion. So
Okay.
I don't not tempted to wear them because of course, they're women's and the size and so on. Maybe if I would collect men's fashions, I would wear them.
Right. And why is that you only collect women's?
I think women's fashions are more spectacular. They have changed a lot because men's fashions, the suits and so on, they didn't change so much.
I see.
Women's
I
fashion,
see.
for one, for example, evening dresses, they are spectacular. And a woman could not, show herself or present herself in a couture dress twice, right? So she would have many pieces. A man could wear a suit many times, right? So for me, the women's fashion is more spectacular and I like it more. You can see the design, the embroidery, part, the details, everything is unusual.
Yeah. And so that was your interest into fashion when you just started collecting all of these women's couture pieces.
Yes, well, at the beginning, I collected only 1920s and 1930s. And
Okay.
from that period, I have some couture pieces from very well known fashion houses, for example, Jean Lanvin from 1925 and so on. But many pieces are anonymous
Okay.
because, at that period, good dressmakers would make wonderful dresses exactly in the style that was popular at that moment.
Mm.
And then after that, I started going to Paris. My first visit to Paris was actually to see and maybe participate in an auction that Christie's was doing of pieces from Marisa Berenson, pieces from the collection of Elsa Schiaparelli, who is
Mm.
my favorite designer. So that
Yeah.
was my first moment in Paris and in a great auction house. And from that, I started coming to Paris twice a year for the couture shows. And yeah, I visited Palais Galliera or Musée d'Art Décoratif and so on. And I started collecting post-war fashion to modern time, specializing in the couture pieces.
Wow. So when you went back to Poland, you had suitcases or you would ship them.
I
to-
would usually have, excess luggage.
Yeah.
That was, and I would ship many pieces. Yes. So, in Poland, where there was no French couture during the
Mm.
times, not many people could travel, right? So we didn't even know what was going on. If someone brought back Vogue, it was like just one, and everybody would go there just to see it, to see what was going on in Europe, for example. So
I see.
I think my collection is quite special because Polish museums don't have couture pieces. They have Polish designers, yes, modern design now, but no couture because it was just not available here.
Of course. Are Polish known to be fashion designers? Is it a good skill that you can find in the nation? I know they're not going to be like the French who are gonna have a lot more fashion designers, but where does Poland fit in?
Well, there are a few Polish designers. Now, many young designers are finishing fashion schools, and they're starting to design, modern pieces. Say, but we are not. We in the during the communist times there was this like country-run fashion house. It was called Polish Fashion. And the first director was Jadwiga Grabowska, who was a very stylish lady before the Second World War. She would be dressed by Chanel and French couture houses because she would travel. She was very rich and so on. But the war changed everything. And after the war, she was appointed to form the first Polish fashion house for the elite, especially for the wives of the ministers and so on. And she was the one who made Moda Polska, made contacts with Paris, and it was in the Chambre Syndicale de Haute Couture. So she was with one person, maybe two of the designers from the Moda Polska go to Paris to see the shows, Yves Saint Laurent and so on. And they would bring inspirations to Poland, to Warsaw. And the fashion shows were inspired by French designers. But you have to take consideration that it was the communist time. So we did not have such beautiful textiles, such beautiful ribbons, accessories, and so on. So it had to be adjusted to the Polish reality at that time.
I see. Quite fascinating. Now, fashion right now in 2026 has gone through a lot, I would say, in the last couple of years. And I'm curious, what is your report card? What is your synopsis of what fashion will be this year?
I will tell you that it is so hard to say. For one thing, I think the fashion is changing, but in a negative way, because we don't have the opulence, the glamour that we had, for example, with Cristobal Balenciaga, Yves Saint Laurent, Coco Chanel, and so on. Lagerfeld, who did for Chanel. We don't have that. We have new young designers. Their visions are totally different of the history of the fashion houses, because we have to take into consideration that most of the historic fashion houses are not run by the first designer, right? Because they're not living anymore. So we have a lot of changes. And what is that going to do? Is the fashion going to be so glamorous like we think of fashion should be? I think the clients are not as glamorous as they were before. We have a new group of consumers who are buying pieces. For couture, it's maybe 100, maybe 200 clients in the world. So really couture, in my opinion, is like an advertisement for the fashion house.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it generates such big sales.
As it used to.
The pieces are very expensive. Not many people can afford that.
Yeah.
So they tend to buy ready to wear, right? But the client is different. It's a young client, different type of lifestyle. Many of the clients probably don't go to big balls, right? Because are there any big balls in the world right now? So you see, I see your head shaking. Yeah. So it changes.
Yeah.
And I don't know, sometimes when I watch, for example, pieces designed by Demna for Balenciaga, well, it was for me, it was very strange, It was interesting, but can we call that high fashion?
That's the $1,000,000 question. I feel like, the consumer is the king in whatever you're creating because you need the consumer to purchase what you're producing. And I feel that when it was September Fashion Week, we were starting to see these creative directors put some energy in. I did see a little bit of effort coming out, like that Gucci collection with Dimna. Well, Pier Paolo, he's always creating these romantic silhouettes, and That's what I appreciate about him. I think J.W. Anderson did a pretty good job with Dior, but I think the overall consensus of fashion critics is like, eh.
Well, you see, I'm a big fan, as I said, of Schiaparelli and also the House of Schiaparelli, and I see that Daniel Roseberry is doing a great job
Yeah,
because in every collection, if it's haute couture or if it's the pret-a-couture that he does, you see the DNA of the fashion house.
yes, which is
So,
important.
which is very important because in some, some houses, in Chanel, for example, we're losing a little bit of Chanel, but I think it's because it's a new client, new consumer. They want something different, right?
Did you like the new Chanel in September, though?
No, I wasn't too crazy about it.
Okay. I definitely
But
liked him better than the previous creative director,
yeah, but
but yeah,
first collection. So
yeah,
it was the same with Daniel Roseberry for Schiaparelli. His first collection wasn't the best. He had little time and so on. And I think from collection to collection, it will develop either in the good way or not. But as you said before, it is very important the economic side.
yeah,
For fashion is like fun, it's the beauty, it's like works of art, but it's not, it has to sell. I'm not looking at that, right? Because I'm
yeah.
not the owner of a fashion house. But the
What do you think?
owners are looking in numbers. Is it
Oh,
selling or it's not selling? So if a T-shirt with just the name Dior on it sells very well, then they make it.
yeah. And that's the unfortunate part because when it's become too consumer driven and you're losing I don't want to say craftsmanship, but you're losing that essence, that style
Right?
of old, the signature touches, and it just becomes blah, but
But you see, but the consumers they want it because they cannot afford a couture dress. They can afford a T-shirt, but if they buy a simple T-shirt with the label Dior, which is inside, and no one will know that they're wearing Dior, even if the quality is very good, they want the name Dior on top.
you
And
see the quality isn't even becoming good like Miu Miu, like all the
well, I, I think, it's risky to talk about the quality because sometimes, I also wear pieces from different designers, ready to wear. And some pieces, they are so cheaply made that
yeah.
it's better to buy a vintage
Mhm.
than the pieces that you have now.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
so,
agree. It's
but
like it's becoming a niche, like this rare group of people who know fashion and its quality. It's become like this, yeah, interesting niche because the consumer as a whole, they've changed drastically. And it's like your type is a rarity, I feel.
because I think the consumer is not, I think the consumer is not as much educated in fashion and not educated in quality.
What happened?
I
Is
don't
this
know
new
because it's
money?
new money,
It's
it's new
yeah.
probably.
Yeah. The
So it
grandmothers,
will it has to change, maybe next generation will start to understand fashion and will start to appreciate quality. When I go to the store to buy something, I look and see the quality. And even if it's Dior, Chanel, whatever, and I see that it's not good quality, I don't buy it. I'm surprised at the price tag, right?
sure.
But no, it's not for me because the quality is not as high as I would expect it to be. But it's the production of pieces at a very low cost and sell at a very high cost. So
I imagine that of these 200 people around the world who can afford real authentic couture, their grandmothers passed on wisdom, their mothers passed on wisdom of, this is what to look for, this is what to buy, this is, da, da, da. Whereas with this new money, they didn't have a grandmother showing them this is what to look for, this is how to shop, because the creative director is going to create along of what sales they're getting pressure from the executive team of that
exactly.
house, and they're just creating what the consumer is buying as
That's
well.
true.
So
That's true. But even if you didn't have, a mother or grandmother who wore couture, you should, yourself think if this is good quality, maybe I will ask someone who is more, experienced in this field. So I will be spending well my money, because if I have a lot of money, I don't want to throw it out, right? I want to spend it very reasonably, buy couture, but I want the quality. So, if only two, it's like a contradiction. So we say that only 200 people in the world uh, appreciate good quality because they buy couture.
Yeah.
What about the rest?
Yeah.
Even if they're not buying couture, but we have to appreciate quality.
Yeah. And
So,
that craftsmanship, I think craftsmanship, it's becoming a lost art in Italy. The leather makers, I mean, the young people are leaving Italy whose families did those craftsmanship skills. It's becoming a dying art, and someone like Tyler Ellis, for example, who makes handbags, she moved to Italy from LA because she's wanting to keep and retain that Italian craftsmanship for her brand.
but for one thing, it's like a dying art. I think older people had more patience to work in such fields because it takes patience.
Yeah.
Younger people don't have, I think, such patience. They may be distracted by internet, by social media, and so on and so forth. There wasn't such thing before, right? So
Right.
the people would go to work and they would really love their art that they were creating, because these were art pieces, right?
Yeah.
Bags, dresses, hats, gloves, whatever. So, and you think, but I think one way that the crafts pieces will be more expensive than the ready to wear that you will find at, Zara or H&M or whatever. And can we afford that? What can we afford? Can we afford something that is custom made, for example, a pair of gloves or a hat? Or can we afford something that we buy in such shops of
Yeah.
a ready to made piece, right?
Yes.
So that's the thing, because no, quality is the most important. If
Yeah.
we don't care about quality, then all around us, we're going to have everything that is so cheap.
Sure.
It's,
I, I think another factor is like the Galliano, the Alexander McQueens, who went straight from Central St. Martin's to working for well-known names, and then they kind of like, was it Alexander McQueen or was it Galliano? He was working for Let Brown's, and then he went to uh, the higher brand. I'm getting my history mixed up, but
well, Galliano worked for Dior.
before Dior, was it Brown's? I think out of Brown's department store picked him up, and then he went into anyways. I think when these fashion houses execs are not going into the fashion schools and looking for the Gallianos and the McQueens, they're not going to take the risk, because there's no more risk in fashion to hire someone young like that with an eye like that, and that's another factor, I think, of why luxury fashion quality is not what it used to be, because it's all about making money. The houses are worth so much more than they were 30 years ago.
But I think like when Galliano was designing for Dior, it was a very big risk for Dior, but Dior was selling anyway then very well, right? And Galliano's pieces were spectacular. And now I think, as we say, a different consumer, and the brands don't want to take such big risks because they have to sell. They have to earn money, more money.
I think
So,
also it was either Galliano or McQueen. The fashion editors had a lot of influence with the houses. So they could say, hey, you've got, look at this kid. He's coming out of Central St. Martin's. He's great. You got now fashion editors, unless you're just Anna Wintour, I feel you don't have influence or say inside of fashion houses. And that might be another factor as well, where because influencers are now sitting first and second row at the
but
show.
who are the I
It's
would ask these questions. Who are the influencers and where do they come from?
their new money. They were
Do they
able.
know the history of fashion? Do they know the history of fashion houses? Who are they?
They're
But
these
you're right. The influencers, it's a new group, right? Who is sitting front row and who has something to say. But if such an influencer uh, is seen or puts on their Instagram, right, on their social media, a certain bag, everybody's going to buy it, right? And
they
that makes the money for the fashion house.
and the fashion editors, we're getting less and less seats. We're on the third, fourth row or standing. Sometimes we're not even being allocated to go to the shows. It's because we're not bringing in the same amount of money as an influencer is.
Exactly, because even if you write an article, right, about the fashion show, it doesn't bring such an amount of money if an influencer is seen with a bag or a belt or whatever.
And posting on their TikToks.
Exactly, exactly.
And
So
this contributes to the quality going down.
in a way, I think so. In a way,
Oh.
I think we don't have such, well, uh, in the old times, right? I think influencers, in a way, were movie stars, celebrities, right?
Mm,
And now I think it's different.
yeah.
It's the influencers, the people that are, it's not this type of person that I would expect.
I know what you mean. Like, once I was leaving a Dior ready-to-wear show, and I was standing on the side of the building where the show was afterwards, and I was talking with a photographer, and all of a sudden we heard the crowd screaming, and we're like, "Oh, who is it? Who is it? Was
Yeah.
it Rihanna? Is it, It was an Asian influencer who we had never heard of, and she's like,
That,
"Mom, how this industry has changed. I've been in this since the '80s, where you had the A-list Julia Roberts types coming in, and now she didn't even know who the influencer, but she had to run and go take a picture because
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That well, a lot of Asians have money now,
right.
so that's why they are consumers for the brands.
Yeah, and these poor houses, they've got to follow the money, and following the money and
I wouldn't call them poor houses.
well,
They
what I mean is
they're making a lot of money, and that's fine.
yeah. What I mean is in the Southern kinda sense, like, you poor dear,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
poor financially, but they've gotta follow the money, and unfortunately, and I think we'll see this year, it's gonna be more of the same. They're gonna be following the money, which means following influencers and the TikToks, and it makes the quality go down somehow, uh, because
that's
yeah,
true. Well, because as we said, people do not understand quality.
yeah,
And
it's
that's
becoming a
it,
lost art.
which is very, very sad.
Yeah. Do you feel the same when you go to Couture Week? And, I feel like what we've been saying is a lot so for ready to wear, but do you feel the quality of couture is also going down?
No, I think the quality of couture depends on which fashion house. I don't want to go into that,
Of
but
course.
I think the couture has a very, very high quality. I
Yeah.
remember, I think it was last year or the year before, I was at like this receipt at Chanel after the couture show, and I had the opportunity to see very closely the pieces, right? To see them inside. They were impeccably made.
Yeah.
That was the real couture that I would expect.
Yeah.
And I think the couture client, as we said, they appreciate quality.
Yeah.
So you cannot make cheap couture. It's not possible. You
Sure.
can make it less expensive by adding less embroideries, which is expensive to make, right? You can
Sure.
make it simpler as long as it has the standards of couture,
Of
but
course.
you cannot make it cheaper. And even if you try to make couture cheaper using, for example, cheaper textiles, right? Cheaper fabrics, it's gonna backlash
Yeah.
because it's not gonna be, a client who buys once and sees that it doesn't work and it's something is wrong with the workmanship, with the quality, they will never buy again. So you lose a very good client.
Yeah.
So it's not a good idea. It would be stupid to do that. But
Yeah.
in ready to wear, everybody's buying ready to wear. So it really doesn't really matter.
Exactly. I'm curious, in this age of and this is I would say it's hit America harder in that a lot of media have lost jobs. Newsrooms are really have narrowed down in the last 5 years, I would say, and a lot of media have gone and started their own Substacks or podcast or YouTube channels, blogs. Do you feel that fashion houses are paying attention to obviously the Susie Mankises are gonna always be accommodated in the fashion world, even though she may not be writing for the big publications anymore. But if you're not a Susie, do you feel that a fashion house will accommodate you, still welcome you in if you're doing a smaller platform of sharing fashion news?
For one thing, I think Susie Menkes is an icon of fashion, right?
Of course.
So she will always be welcome, and that's a totally different story.
Of
But
course.
after her, I don't know if we have someone else that is such a very well-known person and icon.
Yeah.
But I think, as you said, the newspapers, the print magazines are dying slowly. People are going to the internet, to the social media, to TikTok, and so on. So these people who are doing this, doing the blogs and so on, this will be the people, these will be the people who will be sitting in front rows and who will be invited to the shows.
Yeah.
You know, I'm wondering what is going to be with the American Vogue, because now it's the editions are going to be less, right? I think
Six,
twice a month or
is
less.
it six a year?
Yeah. So one per 2 months. Sorry, one per
Yeah.
2 months. So if the idea, if it will be a collector's item, then that's a different story. Because for me, I like print. Like I like to read a book instead of looking in the internet, right?
Yeah.
Because you feel the book, you feel the paper, you look at the pictures, you read it. It's a different type of story. But I think the young people, they don't expect this.
Right.
So that's why it all goes into the internet.
Yeah, and you would say that's the future.
I think it will be the future. I'm afraid it's a big pity for me, at least, but it's easier. We all have internet, email in our phones, right? We have it with us 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So we don't need a book. We don't need a magazine because we are sitting, in a cafe with a phone in our hand. It
Right.
is so bad. 2 days ago, I was going by bus and I went to the bus stop and there was about 6 young men sitting there. Each one of them was looking at the phone. They were not talking. They were just in the phone.
Yeah. I
So
believe
it just, it gives you an idea how it's going to look, how the future is going to be.
and that like e-news in America, it completely shut down this year. And no one would have thought that 5, 10 years ago, e-news. And it's because some Hollywood news broke. TikTok and social media talks about it all day. By the time e-news would air at 11 p.m., it's old news.
Yeah,
And
exactly
so,
right. Exactly
yeah.
right. So, I think right now, uh, if a fashion house or a PR is going to choose people to be invited to fashion shows, they will check how many people are watching them.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
going to be important. Nothing else.
The
So if
number.
that will give them, in a way, free publicity, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter if it's going to be ready to wear or haute couture or whatever.
Yeah.
That's
And
how it's.
even a couple of months ago, they were showing how these publications, the big names, were hiring influencers as opposed to no-name contributors contributing. They wanted influencers contributing because they're also trying to get their numbers up. And I guess they feel when you've got the big following of an influencer hired as a contributor, they're going to get the numbers up.
Yeah, because as we said, it's easier to look at the phone. So more people will look at that influencer and what they are putting on the internet, right? Than the people who are reading a magazine.
Yeah. So I probably would advise a young person or just anyone wanting to go into fashion journalism, really create a beefed up with a lot of numbers following your Instagram or your YouTube channel, it's so oversaturated already. I it's already oversaturated that
It is,
I don't
oh,
know
it is because everyone wants to be an influencer, you know.
exactly, and I think that these fashion houses are like, "Ugh, I've gotten so many requests for the show that you've gotta really be set apart, um, to be able to get in with your YouTube channel or
Yeah,
what."
that's true. But you know, it is so sad that you said that there's so many influencers and there's so many internet channels and so on talking about fashion. I would ask a question: how many of them are really professional? Because
But
everybody can be an influencer. Everyone,
but
but
that requires the fashion house to weed out and only allow people in who know their stuff, who know about the history, the craftsmanship, and I don't think that's their aim. It's about the numbers.
I think so, and it's not really impossible to check everyone. You know,
Yeah,
I don't think that they can manage to do that. But
yeah.
as you said, their aim is on numbers, not not the professional journalism, right? That we know.
And I wonder where then is fashion gonna be in 10 years? Because if you are focused too much on numbers and influencers, the quality, as we keep saying, is going to dwindle down a bit. I'm curious where things are gonna be in 10 years.
Well, you know, I think it is interesting for one thing, uh, what fashion houses will survive.
Yeah,
Of course, the big names, they will survive, right? The
yeah.
smaller ones might not. But we have also new fashion houses that are showing collections at the Haute Couture Paris Fashion Week. We have from Africa, from the Middle East, and so on. So maybe that is the future. That it's changing. It's not going to be only the names that we know. You know, Chanel, Dior, and so on, but new fashion houses. So maybe
That
that's
would be
the
great.
future because we have Georges Hobeika, which is very interesting, right? We have Iman Aisi, new designers that are starting to show very, very good pieces,
Yes.
and the quality is very good.
Yeah. And,
So
Z Gen Z is not spending money on a Louis Vuitton handbag. They're spending it on experiences, and I find that this 20-year-old generation somehow has values and standards. They're about relationships and talking and putting the phone away that maybe they're gonna be the generation to bring us back because the world goes in, extreme
yeah,
pendulums, right?
up
So
and down.
up and
Exactly. Yeah, I think you are right. You know, see it here in Poland that like the very very young people they are starting to ask a lot of questions about a certain designer and so on and how the product is made, right?
Mhm.
And they are starting to appreciate that it is handmade, that it's unique, a very low quantity of the pieces, and they're starting to look at quality, but it's very slow.
Yeah,
So maybe in 10 or 20 years, when these people will get older, they will start to earn more and more money. They will be saying to a fashion house, I want quality.
yeah,
I don't only want a logo on my t-shirt. I want the logo behind. I don't want it to be shown to everyone. It's
yeah,
like the quiet luxury, right? That
yeah,
that that is, I think, the best because you want quality, but you don't want to yell to everyone, I'm wearing Dior or Chanel or whatever. So
exactly.
maybe it will change. We will see.
Yeah, we shall see. A couple of last questions. So you have a new exhibition out in Poland. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I have just opened an exhibition at the Royal Castle in Warsaw, which is a very prestigious place to show a part of my collection. It's a very interesting exhibition. It's the title is "Let Them See Us." So
Oh,
it's talking about clothing and how it describes us, how we wear it as armor, and so on. It shows works of art from the 16th century to the modern times and shows my couture pieces in collaboration with the art. The pieces have been loaned from the royal castle, of course, but also from the castle at Wawel. but we also have pieces from the Louvre. We have works of art from the Kunsthistorisches in Vienna. We have pieces from Dresden. So it's a very big combination. And in a way, it is a fashion exhibition, and in a way, it's not, because it's not only fashion. But we can see how it changed and how, for example, the armor that you would think, for example, in the 16th century was worn, right, for battles, uh, is worn by women in the 1960s with pieces by Paco Rabanne, for example. So
Wow.
it really changes. And I think it's an interesting way to see the fashion and what fashion actually is for us all.
Yeah. Wow. How exciting. And it runs until
It's
February.
8th of February at the
Oh,
Royal Castle in Warsaw.
wow. If I find myself in Europe in January, and I actually have a friend in Warsaw, and she's like, come visit with me anytime. I will go see the
You have to come. You are invited, of course. It will
Yes.
be a pleasure to see you.
Love to see it. Last question. For somebody who wants to be in the fashion world in any capacity, whether that's a writer or a designer, what have you, what advice would you give them?
Well, for one thing, you have to start to love fashion, because it really doesn't matter even if you work in fashion or in other fields. You have to love what you're doing. It
Yeah,
has to be your passion. Fashion has to be your fashion in a way, right?
yeah,
But I think important is to learn the history of fashion.
yeah,
If you're a collector, if you're a journalist, if you just appreciate fashion, you have to know how it changed. You have to know just at least a little bit of the history. You
yeah,
have to know the designers. You have to understand what is ready to wear and what is haute couture. And that will give you a start. And then you will see from this, once you learn this, you'll see if you're still interested in the fashion and in working in this field or not. That
yeah.
I think is the most important.
I agree. I think if you don't know the history and knowledge about designers and some key facts, you're going to be, it's like a four-wheel wagon. One of the wheels are going to be missing. You're going to be lacking in in many ways because you don't have that background knowledge. So,
Exactly. You have to have the background, because
yeah,
if you don't have it, you will not be able to appreciate it. You have to know how the fashion changed. Why, for example, in the 19th century, women wear corsets, and why the corsets were thrown away in the 20s, and why they came back with the new look in Christian Dior, and why did Jean Paul Gaultier put the corset not like an undergarment, but a garment that you wear for an evening with Madonna, right? So you
yeah.
have to know a little bit of the history.
Yeah. And how politics really, world events impact fashion. You know,
Exactly.
because when war started, the corset went and the bra came because women had to sit in factories and
Yeah. Well, that was the moment with the First World War, right? Well, when the men had to go fight, right, in the war, and the women had to take their roles. So
yeah,
the corsets were uncomfortable. So you have to, adjust to the situation. And
yeah,
once they saw that it's better without the corset, they didn't want to go back. So
exactly. Yeah. And it's fascinating, these kinds of things. I think people think, oh, fashion people, it's a fake world and they're living in this hoity-toity, up-to-do, world, but really politics and what's going on in the world heavily affects fashion, and a lot of people don't realize that it is more serious fashion than
yeah,
people give it credit for, and
that's
it
true.
has a seat at the table of serious world jobs, and, yeah,
You
it's,
know, as I said before, we might not appreciate fashion, or we might say I'm not interested in fashion, but every day you put clothes on your back. So,
yes.
and you think, should I wear this or should I wear that?
Yeah, yeah, because we can't go out naked.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Yeah, well, Adam, thank you so much for your time. This has been I think a well-rounded combo on 2026 and where we think fashion's headed. And even though we maybe aren't so hopeful of a lot of changes that would be good in terms of going back to the craftsmanship, going back to the history. It will be intriguing to see what designers come up with and what a lot of these creative directors who, especially when it's ready to wear week, what they created in their first collections in September. I think we're going to really start to see who they are in these new roles.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be a great year.
Yeah.
And I always hope for the best. I'm
Yeah.
always excited to see what's going to happen
Yeah.
because we have to take consider that we are all changing. So the fashion is also changing and it has to adjust to the situation. So we might not like everything, but I think it gives another part of history of fashion.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode and that you have found a soulful connection to the conversation. God bless you, and until the next episode, go bless somebody else.